All right. It's an honor to be with Doug Stanton. Doug, you just shared with us how breakthrough happens when God shows up. And it's not easy, like you said, 7 days a week, up to, maybe 3 weeks in, when people are really hungry and they're seeing breakthrough, and then all of a sudden God shows up in a powerful, even more powerful way. Tell me about some of the things that you've seen when some of the real unbelievable, where it surprised you.
Yeah, I think people getting brand new eyes is pretty impressive. A lady that had eyes that were like milk, like blind, white cane, the whole thing. And then God gives her 2 brand new eyes. I mean, it's not like a healing, it's a miracle when that happens. Yeah. And she had the retinas removed. I mean, she was on 60 Minutes in Australia, and she was also the top doctor in our country called me up, like, what did you do, hit her on the head or something? And I said, no. I said, doctor, you're trying to understand a miracle that God did it. There's no answer to that, just God did it. And he told me, he apologized to me. He said, I took the retinas off the back of her eyes or whatever it is, and it's surgically, there was no miracle, there was no possible way she could see. And then he explained, he said, the reason I'm a little abrupt with you, Mr. Stanton, is that my sister has exactly the same condition. So and this is a top medical scientific doctor. Oh, that's wonderful. But, I've seen, someone came in the meeting and the hand was all crushed. I've seen that in a sawmill. And I prayed with him, and while I was praying with the hand, it was like reversing the camera. And his hand went from swollen and big and broken and just went back. And he was sort of your complexion and, your same sort of hand. And all of a sudden it went from big and swollen and broke. There's more bones in there than you can poke a stick at, And it just went back to normal. I mean, I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at him, and he's going, And first I had my hand on there, and I took it off because I thought I was hurting him. Then I said, what's happening? He said, all the bones are moving, and and I said, so I put 2 little fingers on there very gently, and I could feel it all move underneath, and it just all went back. And he came in after the meeting, there was, and he just went like that, and he said, thanks, Doug, and walked out. And I said, wait, did you see that? And he said, yeah. He testified for years, and his wife was someone who couldn't walk past the letterbox because she had phobias, and she was healed. And the beautiful thing, a little boy with a withered arm, and I prayed with him, like withered and malformed, and it didn't happen instantly in front, but I came back to that church a year later. They told me the arm was growing, and I said, great, God bless you. Came back a year later, people came up with a little toddler. I had a tie on in those days, and this little boy's playing with my microphone just like this. And they're telling me this story, and all of a sudden I remembered the story, the withered arm and the pictures come back of this little toddler. And I said, a little bit dense,
Yeah.
where, because they think and you're this God person that just, but God does it. And I said, how did that baby go? And they said, this is that baby. And I looked down, there was 2 perfectly formed hands and arms, and I just burst into tears. I mean, people look at you like you're the healer, and I have no clue. I mean, I know why God's doing it. I know now the covenant. I know the covenant of healing and why it happens, and I work and teach on it. But as a little girl in Texas, and a mother not saved, Catholic background, 2 little girls. One had MS, and the other girl was normal, and one had not moved. All that happened was her hair would grow, and she basically did nothing. I prayed for the mum. Again, came back a year later, and that little girl was completely normal. And her mother met me at the door, and father met me at the door, and the dad, in sort of the Mexican lingo, said, you can't tell me that God is not the God of miracles. And he was dressed in a suit, and she was dressed like a lawyer. They ushered me into this 1,000-seat auditorium that I was late for. And then she opens the door. I was wondering what they're doing, and here's this little girl, Carly, and she is running up and down. She's like 2 or a little bit more. And the night after I prayed with her, I had a dream. And I told him I saw her completely normal. And when they opened that door, I mean, it still overwhelms me a bit. It was my dream. I'd seen it a year before and told them.
Wow.
And this little girl, who was only 2 and a little bit, comes running up to me. I don't know whether they showed her photos or told her what, but she ran up like I was grandpa. I mean, I didn't have grandkids in those days. But we've seen, look, I could go on for hours of the people got out of wheelchairs, the guy in Africa that was paralyzed from the neck down, and the wife got healed of a heart murmur the night before in Zulu, up in the mountains of Zululand, and brought him back the next day. His legs fell out of the car, got him into the meeting, got him there that night. All of a sudden the power of God came on him, and he starts trembling all over and his big eyes, and I went over and I said, you know, I think God's healing you. Long story short, stood him up, stood in front of him, moved my legs up and down, he moved his legs up and down. And I was having trouble getting through to the Zulus until then. Then, like, there was 1,000 or more Zulus in that, probably 2,000 in a 1,000 tent. You know, 6x1 boards and a bit rough. And all of a sudden, you know, Roger, his name was, he starts walking, you know, a little gingerly to start with, and the apostles and the king of Zululand was on one side, and we're walking out. All of a sudden he gets stronger and stronger, like just in the Bible where that cripple got up and went leaping and praising God. And I had a meeting from then on. I had no trouble reaching those Zulus, you know, because God showed himself strong on my behalf.
So the power of God opens hearts.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's like...
You're a pretty messed up person if when God does a miracle in front of your eyes, you're still a skeptic.
So we had something happen on Saturday that I want to go back to, because you talked about the covenant and on the healing, and how the promise that God has for his children. And I'd like to, if you could just elaborate on that, because I think that's a really important thing that people need to understand.
It's a really important subject.
Okay, so hang in there.